welcome back to the channel. My name is Ari, and also welcome back to my kitchen. Hopefully you'll stick around for a quick video. Okay guys, so this is kind of a stream of consciousness video. I normally try to write out some sort of blueprint, if not a script, for my videos, but today I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. So the title of the video is talking about sex, gender, and the progressive transphobes, or the progressive transphobia. You know, we're all familiar with the transphobia that comes from the right wing, but it can be a little bit more complicated when you're on the left, because on the left, transphobia is usually cloaked in science, it's cloaked in compassion, it's cloaked in patronizing trans people while claiming to be an ally. Now, the reason I did the video is I just encountered that the other day, the last couple of days actually, and I wanted to talk about some of the points that the person who made the original post brought up and how we can better navigate those situations. But before I do that, special shout out to my friend Allison for giving me a little bit of information, for helping me out through this and getting me the screenshots, because I fully blocked the other person because I did not want to deal with all the bullshit. So here we go. Okay, so the person that kind of brought all this up is an atheist activist by the name of Sally Hunt. However, Sally decided to jump into the debate on gender and sex. And if you haven't heard this argument, it basically goes something like this: that gender is a social construct. So a trans man, his gender is male. A trans woman, her gender is female. But then they go that sex is biological and therefore unchangeable, and therefore a trans man may be male-gendered but would be female sex, and a trans woman may be female-gendered but they are male sex. In part of the discussion that she had on here, she also made it a point to mention that no matter what you do, you can't change sex. And this goes right to the point of what we were talking about with the right-wing extremists. This is exactly their point. This is the same thing that we see from the trans-exclusionary radical feminists. The fact of the matter is that that is both harmful and it's incorrect. Biological sex is not as simple as chromosomes, and even chromosomes are actually really complicated. There are not simply two options of XX and XY. There is a vast array of potential options, and even with that, you can't necessarily determine whether or not someone fits within the binary of male or female. But bringing up chromosomes is also an ignorant defense, because very few of us have had our chromosomes checked. I don't know what my chromosomes say, and I'd be willing to bet that most of you who are watching this video also have no idea what your chromosomes actually say, whether they're XXXY, XXY, all of these different options. Most of us don't know, because it's not something that we are traditionally tested for. When it comes to biological sex, they look at chromosomes, they look at external genitalia, they look at secondary sex characteristics, they look at hormones. All of this comes together to create a picture that they work with. But the fact of the matter is it's not so cut and dry. Now, the way all of this got brought up was an initially not necessarily bad post by the person, talking about things like same-sex relationships and gender reveal parties, and trying to make the point that we're talking about two different things with sex and gender, but we are talking about two interlinked things. And where that brought me into it was I ended up posting that I would have to disagree, that I'm female, that I may have been assigned male at birth, but I don't make a distinction between my gender and sex. I'm just female. That unfortunately did not go over well, and in the process of all this, I got told that what I'm saying is internalized transphobia because I'm trying to be cis. Okay, first of all, it has nothing to do with internalized transphobia. A lot of trans people, myself included, have dealt with internalized transphobia. Not being comfortable with being called a gender/sex that you are not is not internalized transphobia. It's called gender dysphoria. So saying that by not acknowledging this false assumption that we are one gender but a different sex really gets to the very heart of what being trans means to a lot of us. Now, she tried to say that because I was saying assigned male at birth, that meant that I was acknowledging that she was correct. And just to clarify on that, I'm not. I said that it was assigned male at birth. I didn't say that I agreed with that assignment. I didn't say that that assignment was biologically sex correct or gender correct, because honestly it was neither. When you're born, a doctor looks between your legs and slaps a gender/sex on it. There is no deep internal investigation to come to that conclusion. There is a very cursory exam that is not greatly scientific, but is mostly just general. So being mistaken on this point isn't in and of itself transphobic. Where the transphobia comes in is when you're not willing to acknowledge the damage that you're doing and you continue to perpetrate that. You know, in the post, you know, she even goes so far as to start bringing up people's genitalia, referring specifically to me, which of course with a lot of trans people, having those words thrown at us are, it's very triggering for the dysphoria. It's very inappropriate, especially for someone who claims to be an ally. But then she goes into a patronizing mode of saying that we need to work on it, that we need to work on our internalized transphobia for the way that we are responding to this. She made the point and said that, you know, when you go to the doctor, you tell them that your biological gender is male. Well, a little problem with that, Sally. I don't remember bringing you along for my doctor's visits. I do not put that down because unless you're a doctor checking the lower region, you have no reason to know any of that. Just because I have a cold, or I have pneumonia, or I have strep throat, or an ear infection, or what have you, does not mean that a doctor needs to know anything about that subject matter. It has nothing to do with it. It is not pertinent to the situation. So no, actually, Sally, I don't share that information when I go into a doctor's office unless that doctor's office happens to be dealing with something related to my trans care. And even then, no, I don't put down that my biological sex is this and my gender is this. I simply tell them that I am trans so that they understand my situation. But making that assumption and assuming that you know what it is that we're all dealing with, that you know what we all say to our doctors when you have no actual experience with that, is incredibly inappropriate. And yes, this whole post did contribute to transphobia. This has been used by the right wing to try to institute discriminatory policies and laws. They want to redefine sex in the way that Sally is talking about, and then say, well, when we're talking about markers on a bathroom door, we're talking about female sex or male sex. So even though your gender may be recognized as such, we can still exclude you. Making that distinction doesn't help trans people. It's actually harmful to trans people. And it's not necessarily scientifically correct because science has evolved on the subject. She posted a big thing on self-hatred, shame, and internalized oppression lead to depression, anxiety, and suicide. That we all must be working towards loving ourselves as we are. Okay, number one, she claims that she has some sort of knowledge, or she purports based on how she's writing, of what the trans experience is. If it were so simple as to just be comfortable with how things were born, people wouldn't transition in the first place. Okay? The reason that we transition is because that is the way of fixing the problem. You can't just, you know, for most of us, it's not an issue of just, I'm going to accept the way I am. If that were the case, then we wouldn't transition. It's foolhardy talking down to us, trying to purport to speak with greater understanding of trans situations, of trans lives, than trans people. So, just to kind of round this out, what I would say to Sally and those like her who believe themselves to be supporters of the trans community while dealing with this type of issue is take the time to read trans voices, to see what trans people are talking about, to stay abreast of the most up-to-date medical science. Because there were a number of articles shared that talked about the fact that it's not nearly as simple as chromosomes. None of those were ever addressed in any of her postings at the time. Again, what we need from allies, real allies, are people that are listening to trans voices. People who are willing to speak up for us, but not speak over us. When you're telling us that we don't know what transphobia is, that's an ignorant assumption. That is akin to men telling women what sexism really is, or white people telling people of color what racism really is. You don't experience it. Don't assume that you know what it is or you understand it, or the oppressive effect that it has on a minority that suffered under that type of phobia and bias. That is not being an ally. We want allies, we want people to support the trans community, but we are not going to kiss cisgender ass in order to make that happen. We want you to support us. We hope that you'll support us and that you'll do so because it's the right thing to do. But if you can't handle being corrected when you're speaking on trans issues by trans people, your best bet, honestly, would just be to shut up, because you're not representing the trans community then. You're not speaking up for the trans community. You're speaking up for you. You're giving your perspective. You're not doing anything that's helpful to the trans community. So, anyway, it's been a bit of a rambling post. I'm not trying to attack Sally and all this, but I do want to make the point that this type of distinction is harmful. What Sally is doing, whether she realizes it or not, is engaging in subtle forms of transphobia and patronizing trans voices in the discussion by assuming that she understands more and claiming that it's, you know, blaming the victim by saying that this is just our internalized transphobia. All of these are wrong and they're not helpful. Anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be doing more hopefully soon. In the meantime, I will close with my quote from Kesha: "Don't let the bastards get you down." Have a wonderful day, lots of love, and bye-bye.